I started running up the gravel road. About 50 yards from the low water bridge, the rays from the Coleman lantern died out and the pitch-black road to the cabin awaited me. The turn-in was at a dirt side road about half a mile from the bridge. 2 fence posts marked its entrance off the county road. When I looked back, I could see the crescent white light from the Coleman crowning the gravel road and silhouetting the flanking cornfields that lined it. Just a little farther and the lights from the cabin will take over and guide me the rest of the way in, I told myself. The moon had not yet risen, and the dirt road was dark and scary, but the stars lit up the night and I was able to follow the dark outlines of the cornfield and the tree line on my right. When I came to the edge of the lake, I could see the light from a boat in the far distance, but there was no light from the cabin in the grove of trees ahead. I panicked. What if Uncle Charlie is in that boat, I thought. Inside the cabin, I called out but there was no answer. I felt my way around the kitchen until I found a long flashlight on the countertop by the stove. I shined it around the cabin, but there was no sign of Uncle Charlie. What now, I wondered. Uncle Billy's, maybe he's there. I rushed outside to the edge of the cornfield that separated the cabin from Uncle Billy's trailer. There was no time to run back to the main road and take it to his turn-in. I started pushing my way through the corn stalks. Halfway across the field, I heard something rustling the leaves ahead of me. I stooped and shined my light down the row between the corn stalks, expecting to see a flesh-eating hog trampling down the corn to get to me. Instead, my flashlight reflected 6 shiny eyes of a gaze of raccoons. They growled and hissed at me as I moved over 2 rows and edged past them. Out of the cornfield, I saw Uncle Billy's darkened trailer ahead. I banged my fist on its door and shouted, "Uncle Billy, Aunt Dottie." All right, I'm coming," I heard someone inside answer. The door opened and my light filled Leroy's face, temporarily blinding him. He looked half asleep and was naked, except for a pair of white underwear briefs. He threw his hand up to block the light and squinted down at me. "Geez, Louise, what do you want, Louis P.?" "Hey, that's a double negative or entendre or something, ain't it? Where is everybody?" "I mean the way I used your name and a nickname twice in one sentence." "Shut up, will you just shut up? Can't you see I need help? Now, where are your mom and dad and Uncle Charlie?" He looked stunned and at a loss for one of the smart comebacks he could always be counted on giving. "On the lake." "What's wrong?" he said. "What about Thad?" "With them, I'm here alone." "Then get dressed and come with me. Spud and Vern Rottenberry are lying on the low water bridge dying from snake bites and we've got to get them to a doctor, pronto." Leroy pulled the GMC onto the bridge. Spud and Old Man Rottenberry were in the same positions as I left them. I jumped out and raced to Spud's side. "Wake up, Spud, I brought Leroy and we're gonna get you to a doctor." Spud's eyelids fluttered, then opened a slit and he looked around. "Why is it so bright?" "Am I dying?" he asked. "No, Spud, no. It's just the truck headlights, and I'm so sorry I dropped those fish and that snake on your feet." I started crying again. "Please don't die, I can't lose you." "We can't lose both you and Dad. You've got to try, got to stay with us, Mom, and I need you so." "Where's my fish?" "I want him back," Spud said. "The bass," I said, looking around the bridge. "I don't know, I don't see him." "Did he swim away?" "Spud, it's not important, getting you to a doctor is what's important now." "Leroy, come help me get him to the truck," I said, as I hooked my arm under Spud's armpit and tried to lift him to his feet. Leroy took his other side and we ushered him to the truck bed and helped him lie down on the straw from last night. Then we helped Vern climb in next to him and headed for the Rottenberry's house. Hi Rottenberry was as stone-faced as when he came to the cabin for dinner and seemed unfazed when we told him what had happened. He looked over the side of the truck bed at Vern and said, "Nod if you think you're gonna make it to town." Vern nodded once without opening his eyes. Hi got into the passenger side and closed the door. I stepped up onto the rear bumper, swung my legs over the tailgate and dropped down into the back corner next to Spud's feet, and we were off. More dust plumed up from the sides and back of the pickup than the last time Spud and I rode in the truck bed. Unlike then, when Leroy and Thad intentionally slowed down the pickup speed to build our trust and heighten suspense, this trip's cause defined urgency and embraced real fear and anxiety, and Leroy's foot on the gas pedal appropriately responded. As we crested the hill from the Rottenberry's farmhouse and barn, I moved to the front of the bed and sat down between Spud and Vern with my back against the cab. They were both drowsy and sweating. Spud was trying to tell me something, but his voice was dry and thin, and I couldn't understand what he was saying. I put my face close to his. "What is it, Spud? Tell me, I can hear you now." He muttered something incoherently and I realized he was hallucinating. "Try to stay still, it won't be long until we reach the doctor," I said. He laid still and went quiet. Not knowing what to do, I laid down close to him and held onto his arm. As I listened to his shallow breathing, I watched the stars speed by through the treetops. Then I saw the Big Dipper and remembered what Mom said about our souls, and I focused on the surrounding stardust. "Daddy, if you are up there and you can hear me, Spud and I need you. Without yours or some higher being's help, I don't know if he's going to make it, and Mom and I won't be able to go on if we lose both of you." I waited for a response, some sort of sign, but nothing seemed to change. Spud and Vern's conditions remained the same, the stars still sped by above, and the GMC kept purring along, stirring up clouds of dust. If you're not up there, and somehow escaped the barge explosion and have amnesia or another family you now live with, or you are in another form, I can accept that too. We will give up all claims to you as our father if you or someone or something can hear my plea and have the power to save Spud tonight. Leroy, High Rottenberry, and I sat in the hospital waiting room while the ER medical staff cleaned up and cared for Spud's and Vern's wounds. The nurse told us that as soon as they finished and moved them to the intensive care unit for recovery and stabilization, we could visit them. "I'm so sorry, Lou," Leroy said. "For what?" I asked in a drained voice. "For the stuff Thad and I did to you and Spud the other night. I now realize how scared you must have been left out there alone in the dark, and it could have been dangerous for you." I looked over at him, trying to determine his sincerity. He looked worried and scared, and I knew without looking in a mirror that I must look the same and that we shared the same guilty feelings. "You don't need to be sorry, Leroy. It was just a harmless prank. Besides, you came through when we needed you the most. You got us here in one piece tonight." He reached over and took my hand, and we returned to our waiting in silence. "Petunia, Louise, and Leroy, are you in here?" I heard Uncle Charlie's voice coming from the ER entrance corridor. Then he, Uncle Billy, Aunt Dottie, and Thad came rushing into the waiting room. "Thank God we found you. What are Vern and Spud's conditions?" "We don't know anything yet, we're waiting on the doctor." "How'd you know we were here?" I said. "Leroy left a note on the fridge," Thad said. "We called your mom, she's on her way," Aunt Dottie said. When the doctor came to report on Spud's and Old Man Rottenberry's conditions, he called Uncles Charlie and Billy and High Rottenberry aside. I figured he had only bad news and was going to let the adults decide how much they wanted to share with us kids, but I wasn't having any part of it, so while the three men huddled around the dock, I sidled up behind them to listen in. "Both patients are in pretty rough shape. It's a good thing you got them here as soon as you did. Because of his age, Mr. Rottenberry is worse off and is still in critical condition. I think the boy is starting to stabilize, again because of his age, but we won't know the extent of either's injuries right away. Sometimes with snake bites, especially cottonmouths and rattlers, there can be nerve damage and paralysis. And in Mr. Rottenberry's case, this might be too much for his heart to deal with." Uncle Charlie shifted his weight from one leg to the other and in doing so, felt me by his side. But instead of sending me back to my chair, he put his hand gently on my shoulder and we continued to listen. "Whose idea was it to cut into the bite marks and try to suck out the venom?" the doctor asked. "Probably Vern's. That's how we growed up learnin' to do it. Always worked before, and we never come to know doctor after, Hai said. I can't decide what effect, good or bad, doing that might have had the condition the patients arrived in. Cutting into the wound and introducing bacteria from the human mouth was definitely a bad thing. Consequently, we've put both patients on antibiotics along with tetanus booster shots and antivenom IVs. Mr. Rottenberry must have thought putting those chewing tobacco poultices on the snake bites was beneficial. That's Indian medicine we learned from our granny. She chawed tobacco and put them on most anything that got bit or cut. Always worked before, Hai repeated. The doctor smiled at him. Well, it may not have worsened their conditions, but modern medicine doesn't treat any kind of venomous bite that way anymore. Your safest bet is to keep the patient quiet, calm, and get him medical attention as soon as possible. Despite everything that could have gone wrong, someone or something was looking out for these two. If you believe in guardian angels, you'd better be thanking the one that looked over this man and boy. A couple of hours later, after Mom arrived, we were allowed to visit Spud and Vern in the ICU. They were both more lucid, a sign the antivenom medicine was working its miracle. It bothered me that they both thanked me for being their angel when I knew I wasn't. If anything, I was an agent of death who dropped Satan's snake at their feet. So how could I be a guardian angel? Who could I have saved? Vern was more likely the hero for rushing in, trying to save Spud. Even Leroy deserved an honorable mention for not running trout lines with the others and being there to drive us to the hospital. If there was an angel at work tonight, my conversation with the stars was a postscript to his, hers, or the universe's work, because the GMC was already on autopilot by then. That is, unless the seemingly indifferent Stardust looking down on us had been at work in some way, all along. Whether our dad was incinerated or exploded into 1,000 bits by the lightning strike or the welding that caused the barge to explode, or is an amnesiac wandering around lost, or happily living with his new family in Natchez, Davenport or some other river town, it no longer mattered. A deal is a deal, and I am at peace with the one I made. Even if I don't know with whom or what I made it. It took Spud the end of the summer and early fall to fully recuperate from the water moccasin's bite, in part because he milked it for as long as he could with Mom. Don't get me wrong, I'm not complaining. Mom was happy we were home safe and showed it. She paid more attention to both of us afterward, and some of our special treats got to be routine ones, like going to Saturday matinee movies and having her homemade fried chicken every Sunday. Even Spud and I got along better and fussed at each other less about the little things. We all seemed to stop mourning our loss and focused on the joyful and funny sides of life and on the good times we had with our dad while he was alive. We even went back to the lake with Uncle Charlie a couple of times, and those times Mom went along. While we were there, we recreated like before. We went boating, swam, hiked, and fished from the low water bridge as if nothing bad had ever happened to us. But we never got another strike from the giant lunker bass. Whether it was caught by someone else, suffocated out of the water, or just swam away, we will never know. Just having him on our hook was a rewarding and thrilling experience that Spud and I will never forget. A lasting memory that exceeds catching and keeping him in any physical form. While I'd like to report that Hai and Vern were warmer and friendlier after our shared trauma, and that Thad and Leroy were less tricky and more trustworthy, I can't. Hai and Vern were every bit as stoic, mysterious, and secretive as before. And while Leroy alone was more caring and nicer to us since our bonding ordeal, he was still under Thad's sway when they were together, causing Spud and me to be on constant guard and in watch-out mode when they were around. As for the stories about the missing kids and hogs eating body parts, I've never asked anybody about that. I don't even want to think about it because I've decided that the best thing to do is follow the advice I once overheard Uncle Billy give Thad and Leroy. Sometimes it's better to let sleeping hogs lie.
John Schlew is a novelist and author of short fiction and poetry. The Low Water Bridge is one of his novelettes, converted to audio format from his book Show Me Big Muddy Daydreams. Other print and ebook published works include the novel Murder at the Nessus Rally and various individual short fiction and poetry by their titles. Search Amazon.com by his name to find all his published works.